Many of you have watched my 10-minute long love letter of a video about the 2020 Rocky Mountain Altitude. Since then, just like the mythical Hydra, the Altitude has came back bigger than ever, which is great, but at least space for a solid bike that is somewhat smaller. Today we'll dive into a hotly requested bike, the 2024 Rocky Mountain Instinct. Oops. I've had a ton of requests from all of you here on YouTube down in the comments about trying out a shorter travel bike from our friends over at Rocky Mountain. Let's unbox and build this new Rocky Mountain Instinct. That was hard. All right, I might need a 6mm to set properly the fork tension. Oh, that's the wrong direction. What am I in, Costco? Okay. Up, down, left, right. Now we've got unlimited re-ups.
Unlimited. Yeah, you gotta be unlimited.
The Instinct has always been one category shorter, smaller, and lighter than the Altitude. In this day and age, the Altitude series is box stock ready for true enduro racing. I wouldn't change anything to enter even the gnarliest of enduro races aboard that new monster machine.
Oh, that suspension saved me.
So what is the Instinct and who is it for? Once we set down our coffee and look at ourselves in the mirror, most of us realize we don't ride triple black diamonds on a daily basis. Not only is this hazardous for our health, most of us don't live with that type of terrain rideable right from our homes. Instead, we have either a wider variety of hills and mountains, or gasp, some simply mellower trails that we find ourselves on more often. The Instinct is Rocky Mountain's answer to the daily driver. Rolling on dual 29-inch wheels, the Instinct uses a 150mm travel fork and 140mm of frame travel. Rocky loaned me the carbon frame Shimano XT-equipped C70 model in the Smokin' in the Boys Room Bad to the Bone colorway. With an MSRP of $6,500, this is a solid all-around bike. Now, the element in the room, elephant, would be the surprisingly negative review of this bike that just surfaced from our friends over at pinkbike.com. The wrecking crew there insists the bike needs more damping support. I'll get into my thoughts later on in this video. How do I do this? Yes, the Rocky Mountain Instinct. This is a great bike, and this video was sponsored by my friends over at Endura. You probably recognize these pants, because this is what I was wearing for a bunch of this video. These are the MT500 burner pants. These are the red ones. Red ones are not available because you all buy black ones. Black ones are available. I really like these pants for a few reasons. The tapered cut of the leg works really well. I don't get pant legs caught in my chain or in my rear tire or anything like that. And then the material is extremely stretchy, so they're very comfortable and they're easy to pedal with. They've got zippered hand pockets to keep your little mitts nice and toasty warm in the winter, or keep your keys safe. And they've got an elastic Velcro waistband so you can adjust if it is indeed wintertime, as we all know too well. I've got a link to the MT500 pants from Endura over to Jensen USA. That link's down in the description below. Anything you purchase from that link, whether it's a set of Endura pants, a full-on Endura kit, or anything you need, that'll help support my channel, and that's a big part of how we all make this happen. Big thanks to Endura for sponsoring this video, and thanks to all of you for trying Endura gear, and let me know how you like it in the comments down below. Let's go chat and ride some more Instinct. Look at this thing. Almost fresh and brand new. Shadow Plus is now on. A little bit of Sedona dirt back there, and on the tires. Welcome to a quick first ride vlog on the brand new Rocky Mountain Instinct C70. Yeah, for the first ride, I'm gonna ride someplace slippery, wet, and messy. All right, time for some pedaling. My first ride aboard the Instinct, and it still had some red Sedona dirt on it from my friend Tess down in Sedona. I hit up some classic North Shore trails and did so with a very open mind. The bike felt great on the climbs. It was easy to maneuver through the switchbacks, and quickly I found it to feel very intuitive. Wow, I really like this thing. This is cool. This thing feels good. So manageable. Seat angle steep but not crazy. Yes, typical Canadian climbing trail. Skinnies and bridges, I like it. Intuitive in the way that Rocky Mountain bikes generally feel. Let's dive into that a little. Ever since 2020, when I first rode and fell in love with that Altitude, I've always enjoyed the way Rocky Mountain bikes ride. I had a very good time on the old Slayer, quite enjoyed the Instinct Powerplay, and really dug the 2024 update for the new Altitude. I'll go ahead and apologize on behalf of Rocky Mountain. After all, they are indeed very Canadian. These bikes tend to be built to a much higher standard than many here in the United States might expect.
The attention to detail goes above and beyond. From many practical adjustments to the less obvious things like including spare parts in the bike box, Rocky makes their bikes legit. Perhaps it's just the hockey in the water, but Rocky Mountain is expecting their customers to be very serious riders, good at what they do, with a standard resting temper just below irate. This means the bikes need to work well, or they'll be cross-checked all the way to Saskatoon. With my experiences both riding Rocky bikes and attending various events hosted by Rocky Mountain, the way these bikes feel is absolutely right up my alley. They climb great, but work best on steeper, more interesting terrain. The Rocky Mountain headquarters is right down the road from the famous Mount Seymour, a premier trail network on Vancouver's North Shore. Yes, that North Shore. It's worth a mention that as soon as I get north of the 49th parallel, I see an absolute ton of Rocky Mountain bikes on the trails. Rocky is very much one of the strongest brands in Canada. I see similar numbers of Rocky Mountain on the trails as I do to Norco, and both are far more popular than other Canadian brands.
Oh gosh.
Here in the United States, Rocky is well respected, but also misunderstood. Rocky is their own worst enemy here. To me, it seems that Rocky is so successful in its home country that it feels like they simply don't need to desperately grow throughout the USA. Rocky is working to change that and is making progress, but it takes a lot of maple syrup to crack the American palate, especially when there are some basic differences in pork terminology.
What's the matter? Your mama didn't teach you how to chug? Come on, Thorn.
I am all that is man.
Back to the Instinct. On that first ride, the stock tires meant I had to really take it easy on the descent.
I was thinking about doing this line. I think I might just sit it out because it's pretty steep and slippery. And these tires are the Stalkers, hard rubber compound and soft sidewall. So I gotta run a lot of air. Oh gosh, calm it down, bud.
Wet roots, wet rocks galore, I needed a softer rubber compound. And for best results, I also need a heavy-duty casing to allow for some lower tire pressures. At the conclusion of the first ride, I felt good about the Instinct and was excited to get it home and start to set it up for my own taste. The geometry is fantastic. The overall build immediately felt pretty solid for my 175 pounds. I knew I needed to work with the adjustments a bit to get the suspension dialed in, but drove my way back to America, quite excited to get into this bike.
Did you guys hear that? Listening closely. It's the sound. You hear it? Sound of the trail telling you to hit the subscribe button down below. That was pretty cheesy. First ride on the Instinct. Yeah, this thing's cool. It's a very capable trail bike. A very fun trail bike. Nice poppy 4-bar horse link. I got a ways to go to get myself dialed in on this platform. Not a ton. It's pretty intuitive out of the box, but I do need to do better tires. I gotta mess with the rear shock a little bit. And yeah, a few little minor tweaks. I'll get this thing dialed in and let you guys know how it does. All right, let's get back to the rig and get out of here. This is the Instinct C70 version, so it's an aluminum frame with kind of second tier down components on it. This is a fantastic bike. If I was buying one of these, I would buy this model right here. This uses predominantly Shimano XT components, including the really good brakes with 4 pistons per caliper. It's got an XT drivetrain with some race face cranks, which are solid. And then the higher end Fox suspension just without the Kashima on it. Kashima looks cool, but would I pay that extra money? Yeah. This is a Grip 2 fork. I thought this was a Grip X. Grip X is a little bit better, but Grip 2 was the top you could get until March, and it still works fantastic. Rear shocks have not been changed since this came out. This is a Float X. I would absolutely run this thing and love it. We have adjustable reach with interchangeable head tube cups. And then we have the Ride 4 system. We get 2 positions for geometry and 2 positions for suspension feel. One is a little bit easier to get into the end of the travel. The other is a little more progressive. We'll try all 4 settings, so that's what we do. And I believe this thing has an adjustable rear end where you can change the rear end length. I'll probably keep it in the short rear end because I like fun bikes. I have one sponsor, that's Shimano. Rocky Mountain just loaned me this bike, media loaner. They didn't give me any money or anything like that. I don't get to keep this bike. I will get on to swapping tires and this finicky drop brake cable, and then we will catch up on the trails. All right, let's do it.
After a quick tire swap, I started to chip away at riding the Instinct, and what a time of year for it. We're finally getting our long-lost friend from above, the rain. The trails are so good right now, soft and tacky, with roots covered in a thin film of mushroom grease. Lately, I've been primarily acousticking aboard the Haro Daily, the Santa Cruz Hightower, and just finished up my time on the Enduro Pals, the Rocky Mountain Altitude, and the Pivot Firebird. While the Haro Daily is a direct travel match to the Instinct, all these bikes are a bit more enduro-inspired, featuring either more travel and/or longer wheelbases. In this context, going down to the shorter travel of the Instinct isn't a huge deal, but with less travel, it becomes more important to have a more active riding style. And if you already have an active riding style, this investment into skills will enjoy a substantial return of that one element we all desperately need more of. That's fun. I rode the Instinct in both positions of geometry adjustment, as well as in both positions of shock progression. I left the reach adjust alone, as the stock reach felt great for me at my preferred Ride 4 setting of hole number 3, Holy Numbers Batman. For you number crunchers, that's a 455mm reach. If I had to provide a metaphor for the Instinct, it would be the fox of the bicycle kingdom. Not the largest critter out there, but for what it may lack in size, it more than makes up for in sneaky tricks, and an innate desire to play. Perhaps one could say that this bicycle has an instinct not unlike that of a fox, pun fully intended. In just the first few pedals aboard the Instinct, I knew it was going to be a fun bike to ride, and it would do best when leaned into its playful mannerisms. Part of a nimble bike is having a shortish reach, allowing the rider to more easily lift the front end. Another part of the nimble equation is a short enough rear end that the front end can loft up without needing the rider to move their weight so far back. On bikes with longer reaches, I usually go to a taller cockpit, both to effectively shorten it, but also to get the handlebars in an easier position to initiate jumps and wheelies. With the Instinct, the very short stack height wasn't an issue, and the smaller number means the bike is quite willing to become airborne.
Ooh, mushrooms.
While I'm not the fastest rider out there, I really enjoy playing around on the trail, interpreting each section as an excuse to jib around with the bike. The more aggressive you are with the Instinct, the better it does. Just watch my legs as I pump around on the little bike. It doesn't have the suspension travel needed to let you simply point your wheels into gnarly chunk. Instead, it requires you to do some legwork and hopping over the bigger obstacles. And it doesn't store up any hypothetical momentum IOUs into a high pivot or a heavily damped suspension. Instead, it pays the energy forward right into the moment, generating speed from every active input. The rest of the Instinct's geometry equates to a bike that handles well on both steeper trails and when ridden while standing. As other reviews online have noted, the bike handles great in the corners.
Oh, tight, so tight.
I spent a bunch of time riding the Maxxis High Roller 3 front tire on the Instinct, and even with that front tire, it was still an enjoyable bike on twisty trails. It does best when you load the bike into and out of corners, again pumping through them, as this bike is apparently a cornering coyote more so than a careening canoe. While riding the Instinct, I got particularly inspired to try jumping again.
Oh, case! I thought I could come and hit these jumps, it'd be great. And here I am, just like floaties at the kid pool. That's how it goes some days. That's okay.
Somehow, I've been too busy pedaling around town to spend much time at the jumps. The little Instinct inspired me to go back to lips and landings. With this naturally progressive suspension, it felt great on lippier jumps. That shorter reach and wheelbase both meant it's a natural bike to nose into a big landing.
Massively out of control.
The Instinct is also an easy bike to place the wheels specifically where you want to on the trail. The frame is well built and has substantial torsional stiffness, especially considering its overall extremely light weight. This is what I mean when I say that Rocky Mountain bikes are well built. They're clearly solid machines intended for hardcore users. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Is the bike enjoyable with the stock rear shock? Pinkbike.com did a quick review on the Instinct, primarily at the Whistler bike park, complaining that the rear shock tune was awful. I found for my casual trail riding, the rear shock did just fine. Keep in mind, I'm also focusing on jumps and playtime more than the Pinkbike crew, and I'm also not really riding such high-speed trails. For the trails you see in this video, I found the amount of damping to be fully appropriate. However, I do feel the bike is more progressive than it really needs to be. Stock, my size medium shipped with a 0.4 volume reducer, and I rarely ever bottomed out.
That color volume reducer is indeed 0.4 of an inch. Not very big, so that means this bike is indeed a very progressive ratio.
I'm almost always the guy who needs to add more volume reduction, so this is a big change for me. To get the right initial sag, I also had to really air the shock up, something like 230 pounds for my 175-pound rider weight. The fork would bottom far sooner than the rear end, but the shock progression felt about where I'd end up if I left all to my own devices. I have ridden Ibis's lighter tune suspension for a few years now and do enjoy the feel of more open suspension. If I have to pick between too little or too much damping, I'm always going to go with too little and compensate with body position and technique. Relying on suspension to save your tea kettle, especially on a short travel bike, is a quick way to get Earl Grey all over your shirt. In the name of fairness, I did ride a DHX coil shock on the Instinct, and it felt great. Was it a different world? No. But I do think that for most riders, the Instinct's progressive suspension curve would pair really well with a coil shock. Or even a more linear air shock, something that has a larger air chamber. I've only been on the Instinct for a little over a month, but I'm keen to play with it more in hopes to build up an instinctitude. Without FAA approval, I would love to try a longer travel fork, the longer reach adjust, and carbon wheels. If I get a moment to do all that, I will. I have a hunch that the Instinct could be well adapted to become an ever so slightly smaller option to the outgoing altitude that I love so much. I keep forgetting this is a review and not just a report of how much fun I had on the bike. First up, the rear shock. In the first ride report, I mentioned that I needed to keep working on the rear shock setup. I ended up adding more air pressure, bring the sag down to about 30%, and move the Ride 4 adjustment to the less progressive suspension setting. I found this to work great for my all-around trail riding. Rebound was fairly predictable, and I had enough rear support to boost all those jumps. Does the bike desperately need a new shock or revalve? For my needs, I don't think so. Now, is a longer travel bike, like the Santa Cruz Hightower, going to be more controlled? Yes, it will. But part of what I like about the Instinct was its ability to ride like a short travel trail bike. I like my small bikes to be more playful than planted, and the Instinct was more fox than capybara, playful yet never boring. Let's discuss the issue of noise. When I ride, I'm usually too cross-eyed to care much about the sounds coming from a bike, but I will concur that the Instinct is indeed a bit of a loud bike. Rather than search for solutions, I went out and pedaled. Good times ensued. So, should you buy the Rocky Mountain Instinct? Pedaling performance is good, not as efficient as the acronym bikes, but on the flip side, the rest of the bike is wonderfully well built and with a real emphasis on fun. The adjustable reach, chainstay, and suspension mean you can really dial in the bike. This won't matter for plenty of buyers, but for some, this is significant. Now, the fun factor. This is indeed significant on the Instinct. I think the quality versus value ratio is actually pretty good, though in the USA, we pay a bit of a premium for a Rocky Mountain. So only you can answer the question, but I hope my insights are helpful. Big thanks to Endura for sponsoring this video. I'll link to all the Endura clothing available at Jensen USA down in the description below, as well as to the Rocky Mountain Instinct itself. Anything you purchase from Jensen USA will help support my channel, and it's a big part of how we are able to make all these videos happen. Big thanks to all of you for joining me, to Riley and Logan for helping to film, and to Riley for his amazing editing. Peace and wheelies. I'll see you all in the comments.
Head slapper.